the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, the United States has told Israel, its close ally, that it opposed the scope of the country's airstrikes in Beirut over the past few weeks amid a rising death toll and fears of wider escalation involving Iran. On the other hand, U.S. has also given Israel 30 days to improve Gaza's humanitarian situation. Now this as U.S. rushes THAAD defense systems to Tel Aviv. We'll get you what happens next on the ground on the show today.
Also on a World DNA, External Affairs Minister of India Dr. S. Jaishankar is in Islamabad to attend a Shanghai Cooperation Organization conclave, and this marks the first high-level visit by an Indian foreign minister to Pakistan in nearly 9 years amidst ongoing tensions between the neighboring countries. We'll bring you the latest on that front as well. This is World DNA. Let's start with the headlines.
The United States warns Israel it could withhold billions of dollars in military assistance unless it improves aid delivery to the war-battered Gaza Strip within 30 days.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejects any idea of a ceasefire in Lebanon without a buffer zone along the border without presence of Hezbollah.
Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is in Cairo to discuss trade and investment as well as the crisis in Lebanon and Gaza.
China accuses two Philippine ships of violating its sovereignty, the South China Sea, after a collision with a Chinese vessel in disputed waters.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit 2024 to kick off in Pakistan today with top dignitaries from member and observer nations in Islamabad.
Former Chelsea and Bayern Munich manager Thomas Tuchel has signed a contract to become the head coach of England. The German will be the third non-British permanent manager of the Three Lions. The United States has warned Israel that it may block some of its military assistance unless it improves aid delivery to the Gaza Strip within 30 days.
Now, in a letter sent on Sunday, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin expressed deep concerns about the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza as Israel denied or impeded nearly 90% of humanitarian movements between the north and south last month.
What we have seen over the past few months is that the level of humanitarian assistance has not been sustained. In fact, it has fallen by over 50% from where it was at its peak. So the Secretary, along with Secretary Austin, thought it was appropriate to make clear to the government of Israel that there are changes that they need to make again to see that the level of assistance making it into Gaza comes back up from the very, very low levels that it is at today.
Blinken and Austin have urged Israel to let at least 350 trucks of aid enter per day, open a fifth crossing into Gaza and revoke evacuation orders to Palestinians when there is no operational need.
The letter addressed to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant comes amid a new Israeli offensive in northern Gaza that has reportedly caused a large number of civilian casualties.
However, the Pentagon declined to discuss it in detail, calling it a private correspondence.
All I can tell you is that the Secretary and Secretary Blinken sent a letter. I'm not going to go into those details. I've seen the social media reports out there, but I'm just not going to go into more details of a letter.
The U.S. has also raised concerns with Israel over the nature of its bombing campaign in Beirut in past weeks. U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that the civilian death toll was among Washington's major concerns in Lebanon.
They do have a right to go after legitimate terrorist targets. We see Hezbollah continue to operate across Lebanon, and Israel does have a right to defend itself against those terrorists who pose a threat to the state of Israel. But we've had real concerns about the nature of the campaign that we saw roll out across Beirut over the past few weeks, and we made those concerns publicly.
As the United States ramps up pressure over Israel's conduct of the wars in Lebanon and Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has rejected the idea of a ceasefire in Lebanon, insisting that there must be a buffer zone along Israel's border with Lebanon where there is no presence of Hezbollah fighters.
Now, this comes after Hezbollah's deputy leader, Naim Qassem, in a defiant televised speech, threatened to expand the scope of its missile strikes across Israel.
Iran-backed Hezbollah said it launched a large salvo of missiles at the town of Safed. Early Wednesday, Israel's military reported around 50 projectiles fired from Lebanon at the country's north without any reports of casualties.
The IDF bombed several areas in southern and eastern Lebanon on Tuesday, including in Bekaa Valley, where a hospital in Baalbek city was put out of service. Lebanon's official national news agency has reported this. It also said that it captured 3 Hezbollah fighters in South Lebanon.
Lebanon's health ministry said 9 people were killed on Tuesday evening in strikes on the country's south. and 5 others in the east, including 3 children. Meanwhile, Hamas has held US regime. As per them, it's the US regime responsible for what it called the genocide in Gaza. As for more than a week, Israeli forces have engaged in a sweeping air and ground assault targeting northern Gaza and the area around Jabalia, claiming that Hamas militants were regrouping there.
We hold the American administration responsible for these massacres and crimes and the genocide that is being committed daily against our people in the Gaza Strip. The escalation of the siege and the killing of unarmed civilians in their tents and places of displacement.
Now, correspondent Susan Tehrani brings you more details on this issue.
The U.S. Secretaries of State and Defense, in a letter to Israel, expressed concern about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. In the letter, they're urging Israel to improve conditions in Gaza or risk losing vital security assistance. The letter was intended to be private as a diplomatic message and emphasized the need for increased humanitarian aid. And while Israel may view it as a threat, U.S. officials continue to insist and frame it as a call to action from a concerned ally. However, the letter is not without its critics. Those supporting Israel's operations say that the United States should not, quote unquote, threat a close ally in the Middle East like that. Others say that the letter was not threatening enough. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World This Way.
Now, Israel is confronting a critical challenge as its air defense resources are strained under recent attacks from Hezbollah's drone arsenal.
As US rushes THAAD defense systems to Tel Aviv, Israel says it never asked for American boots on the ground. Can Biden's weapon push help rejuvenate Israeli defenses? Here's a report. Take a look.
Israel is fighting battles on multiple fronts. Israel is using deadly force. The Hezbollah is proving to be a tough adversary for Israeli forces. They are continuously raining rockets and drones. Sunday's drone attack on the Golani Brigade's base, penetrating 64 kilometers into Israeli territory, killing 4 soldiers and injuring over 60 others, highlights a critical gap in Israel's defenses.
Drones are unlike rockets. They fly on a different flight path. They can move in different directions during their flight. They tend to go lower to the ground. They are slower and smaller than rockets and missiles. Taken together, this can make them much harder to detect. In fact, sometimes they're even mistaken as birds.
Israel's multi-layered air defense network has been pushed to its limits. Since October 7th, over 20,000 rockets and missiles have been launched at Israel from Gaza and Lebanon, stretching the country's interceptor stockpiles thin. Israel's multi-layered system includes the Iron Dome used to shoot down short-range missiles, David Sling used to intercept medium-range missiles, and the Arrow system, which is designed to intercept long-range ballistic missiles. To further bolster Israeli defenses, Washington has dispatched its advanced anti-missile system THAAD along with 100 US troops to operate them. Israel's ability to shoot down incoming projectiles could be further tested when it decides to launch its long-promised retaliation against Iran, which has vowed to hit back hard. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that Israel won't allow US to dictate the terms of the attack.
We listen to the opinions of the United States, but in the ultimate analysis we'll make our own final decisions based on our own national interest. That's always been the case. It's the case with any country which takes the security of its citizens safely, and that continues to be the case now. And the US understands that fact as well.
However, Netanyahu has reportedly reassured the White House that Israel was only contemplating targeting military sites. Biden administration has publicly warned Israel against striking Iran's nuclear or oil facilities in order to avoid a broader war. The big question is, when and how will Israel strike back? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, for more on this, we're being joined by Professor James A. Russell, live from Ontario, California. He's an associate professor in Department of National Security Affairs at NPS, where he's teaching courses on U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, military innovation, and national security strategy. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Professor, let me start by asking you, everyone was anticipating how will Israel retaliate to the October 1st attack by Iran. It seemed as if Israel was delaying it. Now, with THAAD being approved by U.S. and they're being deployed there, do you think Israel was waiting for that green light from them and that they could not have probably done that without U.S. support of defense?
Well, I think the American anti-missile support for Israel, which has been going on for months now, of course, has been instrumental in Israel's plans to strike targets in Iran and elsewhere. And I think the THAAD system is just another extension of this. We've been with our allies. It's not just the United States. The British have been helpful. Others have been helpful. And so this is simply a continuation of what's been going on for the last 7 months, in which the United States has become increasingly enmeshed in Israel's desire for a wider war with the Iranians. And I think the deployment of the Theater high-altitude air defense system to Israel by the Biden administration is a very dangerous move on the part of Biden. It opens the prospect, of course, that it places American troops directly in harm's way. And it opens up the prospect, again, of the United States participating even more directly in this escalatory exchange between the two adversaries.
Professor, Israel is saying that they've not asked for American boots on Israeli territory or Israeli soil, but America has still sent them. I wanted to ask you, what are America's stakes in Israel? Because Ukraine has been getting bombed for nearly 3 years now, but we've not seen American boots on Ukrainian soil. But here, even when Israel hasn't called them, they're there. What are U.S. stakes there?
It's the $64,000 question, of course, that many of us in the United States are wondering about. But it's been clear since the crisis began that as far as the Biden administration is concerned, that the United States and Israel are joined at the hip. Whatever Israel wants, Israel gets. Israel, for its part, has been ignoring all American suggestions for any kind of restraint over the last year. I was amused to hear your reporting on this letter that's come from Secretary Blinken and the Secretary of Defense Austin Long. I mean, people have been starving on the Gaza Strip now for the last 10 months, and these two administration officials are now writing the Israelis a letter about it. I mean, it's hard to know whether to laugh or cry at the ridiculousness of the situation and the treatment of the United States by the Israelis. And yet the Biden administration just sort of marches along, turns the other cheek, and keeps writing the checks and keeps sending weapons. It's a mystery to me, to a lot of us in the national security community.
Absolutely. I was actually going to come to that because you pointed it out. Whatever Israel says, now U.S., whenever they want to tell them that don't go into Gaza, don't kill civilians, they do it. And you want to go for don't invade Lebanon, they go and do that. And they've also told Israel not to attack Iran's oil and nuclear facilities. Now, with THAAD placing in, do you think Israel has the possibility that they will be going there to attack oil facilities or nuclear bases there?
Well, the one thing that the observation I would make about Israeli actions over the last, 10, 12 months is that they're unpredictable and they're unrestrained. And frankly, I wouldn't believe a word that comes out of any Israeli government official's mouth about what they will or won't strike. I think it's very unpredictable. I certainly hope that whatever reportedly private, sort of communications have gone between Netanyahu and the Biden administration about striking these potential sites in Iran. I hope it's true. But if history is any guide, I wouldn't hold any stock in anything that the Israelis have said. And the one thing I would say about this also is that this is a war that Israel has sought, and that Benjamin Netanyahu has sought for years now, and now they've got it. And guess what? The enemy is raining missiles down on them too, and it could get a lot worse for them. I mean, it's the truism of the adage is be careful what you wish for. The Israelis want the wider war. It looks like they're going to get it. I just hope from the American perspective that the Biden administration can somehow keep us out of this fight, which is already a disaster. There are 1 million people that are displaced in Lebanon. The Israelis are now slaughtering people in southern Lebanon just the way they've done in southern Gaza. It's just what an appalling situation.
And it only seems to be getting worse. There seems to be no ray of light coming in, and ceasefire talks are not even on the table at this point, and not even in reports anywhere. One can only hope at this point. Thank you so much for joining in, Professor Russell. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.
Right, and moving to other global news, Myanmar rebels are making advances in a northern Shan state.
Well, ethnic armed groups of Myanmar have now taken control of key strategic points for trade with China. Northern Shan state has been rocked by fighting since June, when an alliance of these groups renewed an offensive against the military along the highway to China's Yunnan province.
The Tang National Liberation Army claims to have captured the town of Sipaw on Sunday. Rebels claim that the last military base in Sipaw is now under their control after weeks of fighting.
Sipaw falls in the key highway connecting Myanmar's second biggest city, Mandalay, to China's Yunnan province. Hundreds of millions of dollars of trade that takes place annually along this highway, and Shan state is critical for the resistance movement to control because it relies on the border with China. In August, the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance army seized the town of Lashio. Lashio and Muse are the key strategic places for trade with China.
The Three Brotherhood Alliance is made up of Arkhan Army, Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army, and Tang National Liberation Army. The rebel alliance launched offensive across northern Shan state last October, seizing swathes of territory and dealing the military with its biggest blow since it seized power in 2021.
Myanmar's junta has not commented on the fighting in Sipaw. TNLA has claimed that 100 soldiers from the military have laid down their weapons since August. Despite China's attempts to negotiate a regional ceasefire, Myanmar's civil war does not seem to be ending anytime soon. Well, it's just 3 weeks to go for the 2024 US presidential elections. Here are some of the top stories shaping the race to the White House.
Republican candidate Donald Trump has said that companies will drop plans to build factories overseas when faced with the threat of high tariffs on shipping goods to the United States. The former president has vowed a 10% to 20% across-the-border tariff on imports and a 60% rate on Chinese goods, and more recently threatened a 200% levy on automobiles made in Mexico.
Speaking at the Economic Club of Chicago, Trump said the higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States, adding, "You make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious that companies will come right away." The economy has emerged as one of the main issues ahead of the November 5th election, where Trump is in a dead heat with Vice President. It's a dead heat race with Vice President Kamala Harris, according to polls.
Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris spent much of Tuesday questioning Donald Trump's mental state and fitness for office. The attack came after the Trump's latest televised town hall veered into an impromptu music session. Harris reacted to a video of the event on social media platform X, writing, "Hope he's okay." Harris's campaign, which has begun to aggressively challenge Trump on his health and mental stability, said that he appeared lost, confused, and frozen on stage during the Monday event.
Trump, however, defended the event in the critical swing state of Pennsylvania, saying it was so different. Democratic vice presidential nominee Tim Walz has unveiled Kamala Harris' plans to improve the lives of rural voters, and this comes as part of concerted effort by the Democratic campaign to make a dent in the historically Trump-leaning voting bloc. During a campaign rally in Pittsburgh, Walz said that Kamala Harris is offering a new way forward and a better tomorrow. The Harris-Walz plan that the Minnesota governor announced includes a focus on improving rural healthcare. It also includes loan forgiveness and new grant programs, as well as economic and agricultural policy priorities.
In battleground Georgia, early in-person voting has begun. The process will go on till November 1st, after which the main voting process across U.S. will be held on November 5th. The process begins just one day after a judge in Georgia ruled that county election officials may not delay or decline to certify election results over any allegations of fraud or error in the battleground state. Early in-person voting is also scheduled to open in North Carolina in 2 days.
All right, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani brings you more on the early voting in Georgia.
Georgia sees record-breaking voting with over 252,000 ballots cast on the first day, more than double the 2020 record. And despite past controversies and new election laws, voters in Atlanta reported a smoother voting process. Notably, the surge in voting comes as part of the state is still recovering from Hurricane Helene, which hit last month. Election officials assured voters that absentee ballots will be mailed on schedule and unaffected by the storm. Georgia's Secretary of State expects around 5 to 6% of voters to cast absentee ballots with tightened security rules and fewer drop boxes. Early in-person voting may remain popular. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
All right, 2 giant pandas from China arrived at a zoo in Washington, D.C.
Well, Chinese and American experts will cooperate to ensure the well-being of the 2 giant pandas. Both 3-year-old pandas, Bao Li, the male panda, and Qing Bao, the female partner, will be housed at Smithsonian National Zoo in Washington under a decade-long breeding and research agreement. Only a few of the beloved black and white bears remain in the United States. Almost all were returned to China in recent years under pre-arranged contracts, including all 3 of the National Zoo's pandas last November.
Since 1972, China has been using panda diplomacy. When the first animals were sent to Washington as a gift, this was followed by U.S. President Richard Nixon's historic visit to the communist nation. At a summit in California last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping, after meeting U.S. President Joe Biden, said that China could send new pandas as envoys of friendship between the Chinese and American people.
The San Diego Zoo in August welcomed 2 new giant pandas. These were the first to be sent by China in 21 years. And now preparations are underway at the Washington Zoo for the arrival of these pandas, who have been star attractions for decades. Renovations are being done at the panda habitat, and according to the zoo website, new structures are being constructed for pandas, which has a shallow pool. The new structure has a shallow pool. These are being done to enhance the safety of the facilities and maximize space for the bears to roam.
All right, it's now time for a quick break.
Don't go anywhere. Of course, this is World DNA. Josna and I will be back with you on the other side. Lots more lined up. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, is in Pakistan to attend the 23rd SCO Summit. That will start. Of course, that is already underway. Now, we will be bringing you the complete report on the other side.
Omar Abdullah is set to be sworn in as the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. The ceremony is scheduled to be held later in the day. We'll get you all the details from the ground later on the show.
Business Masters is a wonderful initiative. It not just talks about what drives business, it also talks about the leader and what drives the leader who runs the business as well.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders. From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership. We will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders. WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
The US race to power, marked by high-octane campaign rallies, life-threatening encounters, game-changing presidential debates, the color and the drama, the key defining moments, deep insights and informed analysis. Watch continuous coverage of the US presidential elections 2024 on WION World is One.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar, and my colleague Shivanchana. Let's start with the headlines.
India's Jammu and Kashmir to get new government today. Omar Abdullah set to take the oath as the first chief minister since Jammu and Kashmir became a union territory.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit 2024 to kick off in Pakistan today with top dignitaries from member and observer nations in Islamabad.
Fighters from Myanmar ethnic armed group claim to seize another town on a strategic highway to China in the latest setback for the embattled junta.
China accuses two Philippine ships of violating its sovereignty in the South China Sea after a collision with a Chinese vessel in disputed waters.
The United States warns Israel it could withhold billions of dollars in military assistance unless it improves aid delivery to the war-battered Gaza Strip within 30 days.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejects any idea of a ceasefire in Lebanon and insists on a buffer zone along the border without presence of Hezbollah.
Former Chelsea and Bayern Munich manager Thomas Tuchel has signed a contract to become the head coach of England. The German will be the third non-British manager of the Three Lions. All right, the 23rd edition of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, the SCO Summit, will start in Pakistan today.
This is with top dignitaries from member and observer nations in Islamabad. The capital has been locked down under top-notch security measures. This amid a wave of terror attacks that has led up to the summit. Now, among the guests is India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. Now, he is the first top diplomat to visit the neighboring nation in nearly a decade.
Jaishankar and Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif greeted each other with a firm handshake and somber expressions at the start of an official dinner for the visiting leaders of the bloc. No bilateral meetings have been requested during his visit, and Jaishankar's visit will strictly follow the SCO summit schedule.
Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif hosted a welcome dinner for leaders who are attending the meeting. Chinese Premier Li Qiang and Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk, whose nations established the SCO, are also in town for the meeting.
The bloc of 10 nations also includes Belarus, Iran, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. 16 more countries are affiliated as observers, as dialogue partners, and the summit will culminate with the main conference expected on Wednesday.
Ahead of the conclave, Islamabad, along with the neighboring city of Rawalpindi, have been placed under lockdown due to heightened security concerns. The Pakistani government has deployed close to 10,000 paramilitary and police personnel across the national capital. This is to ensure the safety and well-being of close to 900 delegates who will be attending the two-day event. A red zone of approximately 14 locations has been arranged across the capital for the accommodation of delegates.
The threat alert has been high, especially after the killing of 2 Chinese engineers recently and the gunning down of 21 coal miners earlier in the week. Chinese workers in Pakistan have been particularly targeted in attacks across the country.
All right, so for more on this, our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik has joined us from Islamabad. Thank you, Anas, for joining us. Now, everything looks decked up. How is the mood down there, and what is the schedule for today? Tell us more.
Well, the mood is all good. It's all set. The stage is all set. The mood has been quite charged. It won't be wrong to say, Jyotsna, because the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's 23rd Heads of Governments meeting, is all set to begin in about an hour from now. With regards to the schedule, at around 8:30 a.m. local time, that's about 9 a.m. IST, in about an hour from now, is when the arrivals will begin. The first in the order of arrivals would be the Belarusian Prime Minister, followed by the Irani minister. Remember, Iran has withdrawn its level of participation. Its first Vice President, Raza Aref, was supposed to attend, but late last night, after changing their schedules twice, is when the Iranian Minister for Mines and Industries, Mohammad Atabek, he is the one who has arrived in Islamabad. So Iran will be number 2 in the order of precedence with regards to handshakes. Then it would be the Indian External Affairs Minister, followed by Kazakhstan, followed by China, and then Kyrgyzstan, Russia, and so on. It goes with the Russian alphabetical order. Then after the handshakes and formal welcome at around 10 a.m. Pakistan time is when the family photo, group photo is to be held. This is what the schedule is like. And then at around 10:30 a.m. Pakistan time is when the summit gets underway till about 12:30 or 1, after which the declaration or the joint communique will be signed. Signing of documents. There are 10 documents that have to be signed, 4 of them being with regards to directly being cooperation. First being the cooperation among trade promotion bodies. That was a Pakistan proposal that was adopted by the SCO. Second is with regards to the preferential trade agreement among SCO countries. That is a Kazakh proposal that too has been adopted by the SCO. Third is with regards to the cultural economy and creative economy proposal that has been proposed by Russia. That has been adopted as well and jointly agreed upon during the national coordinators meeting. And fourth is the new economic dialogue that was tabled initially by Uzbekistan and is now an SCO document as well. Josina?
Anas, you've pretty much packed in all that is scheduled for today. I also wanted to understand from you, there are 1,300 delegates coming in from around the world. Of course, at this point, it's not just the venue which will need to be secured. It's also their travel. It's also their stay. What is the security apparatus looking like? And also give us a walk around where you're standing and what everything is looking like around you after that.
Well, I'll give you the walk around in a short while, but just to give you a sense on the security situation, special passes have been issued. Islamabad has been put under lockdown. It won't be wrong to say there are over 12,000 military and paramilitary personnel who have been deployed around Islamabad, and in a bid to secure the movement of not just these 1,300 delegates, close to 1,300 delegates, but over 200 plus foreign media, which is currently in Pakistan as we speak. I'm standing at the PCFC, which is the media facilitation center that has been made. And what you see behind me, even now it's just before 8 a.m. here in Pakistan. It's around 7:40 a.m. and even now the security is quite beefed up. You still need special passes. There are standees that have been set up. I'll ask my camera person to zoom in to show you. There are standees like these that have been set up that basically signify all of the member countries as to when they have joined. You can see India with that Taj Mahal, and it says member since 2017. Kazakhstan member since 2001 with the TV tower. Uzbekistan with the the mausoleum in Samarkand that signifies Uzbekistan, that says member since 2001. So standees have been put in place in an attempt to make sure that people are very well versed that ways. Right now, the arrangements have been set not far from where I'm standing, at about a kilometer or probably less than that, is the Jinnah Convention Center, where the main summit is going to happen in a very short while, when the Pakistani Prime Minister will be receiving all of his guests. And the security over there is also very much similar to where we are right now.
Yes.
And the Pakistani Prime Minister in a short while will be welcoming his guests.
All right, Anas, thanks so much for getting us the latest. And as you mentioned yesterday, all those double-layered containers have been moved. Islamabad is cleaned up. And I must say, you're looking rather sharp as well for the event. Thank you so much. We'll get in touch later in the day.
Thank you.
All right, moving to India, where Jammu and Kashmir will get a new government today.
Well, with Omar Abdullah set to be sworn in as the Chief Minister of the Union Territory, the ceremony is scheduled to be held later in the day. This marks the return of an elected government to the region after 6 long years.
The swearing-in ceremony is expected to witness several prominent leaders from the INDIA bloc, a coalition of opposition parties. The oath-taking ceremony will take place at the Sher-e-Kashmir International Conference Center on the banks of Dal Lake in Srinagar. Elaborate security and other arrangements are being made as well. Top leaders from the opposition INDIA bloc and other parties will be there at the event. Now, among them are Samajwadi Party leader Akhilesh Yadav, Kanwamozi Karunanidhi from the DMK, Supriya Sule from the NCP, and Sukhbir Singh Badal from the Shiromani Akali Dal.
While the oath-taking ceremony will open a new chapter for Jammu and Kashmir, it is also said to be a demonstration of unity among opposition parties ahead of crucial assembly elections in the states of Maharashtra and Jharkhand. The National Conference has extended invitations to key figures such as West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin, Uddhav Thackeray, Sharad Pawar, Lalu Prasad Yadav, Arvind Kejriwal and D. Raja.
The National Conference Congress Alliance won a majority in the recent assembly elections with a total of 48 seats out of 90. This will be Abdullah's second term as Chief Minister. However, this time he will be governing a union territory without the special status that Jammu and Kashmir once held.
Mumbai police has arrested one more person in connection with the murder of Indian politician and businessman Baba Siddique,
claiming that he provided money and weapons for the crime. The accused, Harish Kumar Balakram Nisad, hails from Bahraich, a town in the state of Uttar Pradesh. He was remanded in the police custody till October 21st on Tuesday. And according to an official, Nisad worked as a scrap dealer in an area of Pune city. A team of Mumbai crime branch had apprehended him from Bahraich on Monday.
So far, police have arrested 4 people in the case, including Gurmail Baljit Singh from Haryana, Dharamraj Rajesh Kashyap from Uttar Pradesh and Praveen Lonkar from Pune. All have claimed affiliation with the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. The 66-year-old Baba Siddique, a former Congress leader who had joined the Nationalist Congress Party, the NCP, earlier this year, was murdered in Mumbai's Nirmal Nagar area.
And with assembly elections in Maharashtra just around the corner, the killing of the former minister and NCP leader has come as a shocker in the political circles. The police has said they are also investigating potential political rivalry in the murder. Catastrophe bonds seem like a smart way to combat the impact of climate change.
However, they may not be helpful to vulnerable countries in the event of a calamity. Take a look at this next report based on Bloomberg Green's investigation.
The harsh reality of catastrophe bonds is that the nation that needs the payout the most often are the ones losing out. What are catastrophe bonds? They are popularly known as cat bonds on Wall Street. Cat bonds are bets on the likelihood of catastrophic natural disasters. A storm, earthquake, wildfire or flood is considered to be a disaster. Investors who purchase these bonds stand to gain significant returns if a disaster doesn't materialize. Buyers risk losing all or part of their money if it does. In other words, it's like taking out an insurance against a disaster. There is clear disparity when it comes to cat bonds for developing and developed nations. Take the hurricanes in Florida and Jamaica, for example. Both administrations had spent millions of dollars on cat bonds, which serve as insurance in the event of a calamity. The Jamaican and Florida governments depend on these payouts to finance recovery options. Florida residents will get compensation based on their real losses. Jamaica's equivalent setup did not help. Despite Beryl's terrible toll, the government's World Bank-backed disaster bond, which could have paid out $150 million, did not trigger. The reason? Developing countries utilize different and perhaps less forgiving comparable bonds. Jamaica utilizes an instrument that only pays out in the event that a storm hits a predefined air pressure measurement. Without waiting for damage assessments, these mechanisms, known as parametric triggers, unlock money extremely fast. However, the setting may potentially have unfavorable outcomes. Jamaica wasn't lucky. The reason? Data determined that Beryl missed the trigger outlined in its cat bond by the narrowest of narrow margins. Bond purchasers in the US and Europe could expect gains of almost 12% this year. Nothing will be given to Jamaicans. Jamaicans find it difficult to understand the results on 2 levels. The complexity of the financial structure and the outcome's seeming injustice. This feeling of unfairness casts doubt on a market-driven solution that is being promoted more and more as means of shielding poor nations from more severe weather. In the developed world, governments and insurers generally avoid parametric cat bonds due to their binary character. The World Bank and Western governments have been convinced to support them for the developing world due to the promise of quick money. Recently, cat bonds have gained popularity among some of the most elite financial players in the world. In 2023, this hedge fund approach produced the highest investment returns. Additionally, it is anticipated that issuance will reach a record high in the coming months. This is likely to push the market's total value above $50 billion. Still, for the vulnerable, this seeming unjust parametric trigger insurance is still the only option and an outside hope. Business Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, next up, let's take a look at all the developments from technology. According to Microsoft's latest report, Russia, China and Iran are increasingly relying on criminal networks to lead cyber espionage and hacking operations against their adversaries. And of course, that includes the US. The growing collaboration between authoritarian governments and criminal hackers has alarmed national security officials and cybersecurity experts. The report claims that nations like Russia, China, Iran and North Korea, which have their own ties to hacking groups teaming up with cyber criminals, offers a marriage of convenience with benefits for both sides. While governments can boost the volume and effectiveness of cyber activities without added cost for criminals, these types of cyber espionage campaigns offer new avenues for profit and the promise of government protection.
The Biden administration has announced their plans to provide up to $750 million in direct funding to Wolfspeed for its new silicon carbide wafer manufacturing plant facility. The North Carolina-based company's two projects are estimated to create around 2,000 manufacturing jobs as part of more than $6 billion expansion plan. The company, which counts General Motors and Mercedes-Benz among its customers, makes chips using silicon carbide, a more energy-efficient material than standard silicone. With Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris making the case to voters that the Biden administration's mix of incentives are increasing factory work and job opportunities in the state, the new Wolfspeed facility could be a critical symbol in this year's U.S. presidential election.
The Indian government has announced that they will be allotting the much contested spectrum for satellite broadband administratively and not via auction. While speaking at an event, India's telecom minister Jyotiraditya Scindia said that the spectrum will be allocated administratively in line with Indian laws, with the pricing worked out by the telecom watchdog. India's satellite market is set to grow 36% annually and is expected to reach $1.9 billion by 2030. The method of allocating spectrum for satellite services in India has been a point of contention since last year. While Musk's Starlink argues that administrative licensing aligns with international practices, India's Reliance insists on an auction to ensure fairness and address the lack of specific legal provisions for individual satellite broadband service providers in India.